You're standing in a forest 40,000 years ago. You're hungry, not I skipped lunch hungry, but genuinely, dangerously hungry. And right in front of you is a bush covered in bright red berries. They look incredible. They smell fine, but you have absolutely no idea if eating them will feed you or kill you. No Google, no field guide, no doctor within a 40,000-year walk. So what do? Because here's the thing. Your ancestors figured it out, and the answer is far stranger than you think. Most people assume the answer is simple. Trial and error. Someone ate the wrong berry, got sick, told the group, and everyone avoided it from then on. And sure, that's part of it. But if that were the whole story, we'd have gone extinct 100 times over. Think about what that actually means. Every single poisonous plant, every toxic mushroom, every dangerous root, someone had to be the first to eat it. And in a world where your group might be 25 to 50 people, losing even one member to a bad meal wasn't just tragic. It was a survival crisis. You can't afford a learning curve when the tuition is death. So the real question isn't just how did they figure out what was poisonous? It's how did they do it efficiently enough to not die out in the process? And that question opens up one of the most underappreciated survival stories in all of human history. Let's set the stage. For most of human existence, we're talking over 200,000 years of Homo sapiens, we were hunter-gatherers. No agriculture, no domesticated crops. Every single thing you ate, you had to find, identify, and decide to trust with your life. And the plant world is not friendly. Of the roughly 400,000 plant species on Earth, a significant percentage produce compounds that are toxic to mammals. Alkaloids, glycosides, tannins, oxalates. Plants evolved these chemicals specifically to stop things from eating them. That's their whole defense strategy. They can't run, they can't hide, so they poison. And early humans were walking straight into that chemical battlefield with nothing but their senses and whatever knowledge their group had managed to accumulate and pass down. But here's what makes this genuinely remarkable. They didn't just survive it, they thrived. They figured out which plants were safe, which were deadly, and here's the part that really gets interesting, which ones were dangerous but could be made safe with the right preparation. That last part is the key to this whole story. Let's start with your body because it's doing more work than you realize. You have roughly 25 different types of bitter taste receptors. They're called TAS2R genes. And they exist for one primary reason, to stop you from eating things that will kill you. Bitterness in nature is a warning label. Most plant toxins, alkaloids especially, taste bitter. And your mouth is essentially a chemical detection lab that evolved over millions of years to flag those compounds before they ever reach your stomach. In 2003, Dennis Draina and his team at the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders identified the gene TAS2R38, which determines how strongly you perceive bitter compounds like PTC and PROP. And here's what's fascinating. There's enormous variation in this gene across human populations. Some people are super tasters, some barely register bitterness at all, and that variation maps closely onto ancestral diets. Populations that historically relied more heavily on wild plant foods tend to carry higher frequencies of the strong-tasting version of the gene. Your tongue is, quite literally, shaped by what your ancestors needed to not die. That is not a small thing. But taste alone wasn't enough. Not even close. Here's where it gets really interesting. Ancient humans didn't just stumble around eating random things and hoping for the best. They watched animals, carefully. If a bird ate a berry and was fine the next morning, that was data. If a deer consistently avoided a particular plant, that was also data. This isn't speculation. Ethnobotanical research has documented this behavior across dozens of indigenous cultures worldwide. People watched, they noted patterns, and then they tested. Carefully. And when I say carefully, I mean it. Many traditional cultures developed systematic approaches to testing unfamiliar foods that are remarkably similar across continents that had no contact with each other. Rub a small amount on the inside of your wrist. Wait. Touch it to your lip. Wait. Place a tiny amount on your tongue. Wait. Chew a small piece without swallowing. Wait. Each step separated by a pause, sometimes hours, sometimes a full day, watching for redness, swelling, numbness, nausea. This is not random guessing. This is a protocol, an unwritten, orally transmitted protocol refined across thousands of years and countless generations. But the real genius, the thing that separates human food knowledge from every other species on the planet, is what came next: cassava. Right now, today, it's one of the most important food crops on Earth. Over 800 million people depend on it as a staple. And in its raw form, it contains cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that release hydrogen cyanide when the plant tissue is crushed or chewed. Cyanide. the same chemical used in spy movie suicide capsules. Eating unprocessed bitter cassava can genuinely kill you. And yet, communities across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia figured out independently, on different continents, multi-step detoxification processes to make it safe. We're talking peeling, grating, soaking in water for days, fermenting, pressing out the liquid, then roasting or drying what's left. Some methods involve burying the pulp underground. Some require specific types of running water. The full process can take 3 to 5 days. And if you skip a step or rush it, you don't get slightly worse cassava. You get cyanide poisoning. Timothy Johns, a researcher at McGill University, spent years studying exactly this phenomenon. His 1990 book, With Bitter Herbs They Shall Eat It, documented how indigenous peoples across the world developed astonishingly sophisticated methods for neutralizing plant toxins, including geophagy, the deliberate eating of certain clays and mineral-rich earths to bind toxins in the digestive tract. These weren't random folk habits. They were technologies, biological technologies, developed without chemistry labs, without written language, without any of the infrastructure we associate with scientific knowledge. And they worked, precisely and reliably. Think about what that actually means. Someone, thousands of years ago, figured out that if you take a deadly root, grate it, soak it in water for 72 hours, press out the liquid, ferment what remains, and then cook it, it becomes one of the most reliable calorie sources on the planet. The number of failed experiments behind that breakthrough is staggering, and every failure meant someone got sick. Or worse, that knowledge was paid for in suffering, and then preserved in memory and passed mouth to ear for generations. Let that sink in for a second. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. Ancient humans didn't just learn to avoid poison, they learned to use it deliberately, strategically. Arrow poisons, fish-stunning compounds, insect repellents, medicinal preparations that could cure at one dose and kill at another. And somehow, without pharmacology, without dosage charts, without clinical trials, people figured out where those lines were. The 16th century physician Paracelsus put it memorably, "The dose makes the poison." But indigenous communities around the world understood this principle thousands of years before he was born. Curare, the famous arrow poison used by indigenous peoples across South America, is derived from plants in the Strychnos and Chondrodendron genera. Applied to a dart tip and shot into prey, it paralyzes the muscles and kills. But refined and administered in controlled doses by modern surgeons, it became tubocurarine, one of the foundational drugs in surgical anesthesia during the 20th century. The same compound, same plant. The difference is dosage and delivery. And the people who first figured this out did not have pharmacology degrees. They had observation, patience, and an oral tradition that treated this knowledge as genuinely sacred, because it was. And here's the part that connects all of this to you right now, today. Every time you instinctively recoil from something bitter, that black coffee you hated as a kid, that Brussels sprout you pushed around your plate, that's not pickiness. That's 200,000 years of chemical survival programming firing in real time. Your taste buds are running ancient software, and that food knowledge your ancestors built, it didn't disappear. It became cuisine. The spices in your kitchen, turmeric, black pepper, garlic, chili, ginger, many of them started as medicinal compounds, used to kill parasites, preserve food, or neutralize mild toxins in other ingredients. The reason virtually every culture on Earth independently developed fermented foods, yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, sourdough, is because fermentation breaks down compounds that would otherwise be difficult or dangerous to digest. You're not just eating lunch. You're participating in an unbroken chain of chemical experimentation that stretches back to the Pleistocene. You just don't think of it that way. We spend a lot of time marveling at ancient engineering. The pyramids, Stonehenge, Roman aqueducts, and those are impressive, genuinely. But the knowledge of which plants to eat, which to avoid, and which to transform through days of careful, precise processing, that kept entire civilizations alive. It was passed from parent to child, generation after generation, for tens of thousands of years without a single written word. No textbook, no peer review, no curriculum, just observation, memory, and the understanding that getting this wrong meant someone doesn't come home. That's not primitive. That is one of the greatest intellectual achievements in human history, and it's encoded in every meal you've ever eaten, every flavor you've ever craved, every bitter thing you've ever spit out without knowing why. 40,000 years ago, someone stood in front of a bush full of bright red berries and made a choice. You're here because they got it right.